Today we're going to continue our study of Social Studies Chapter 5, Ancient India, with Lesson 3. And Lesson 3 is the origins of Buddhism. If you'll remember last time, we talked about Hinduism. Our big idea today. Buddhism began in India and became a major religion. And there are three main ideas. One, Siddhartha Gautama searched for wisdom in many ways. The teachings of Buddhism deal with finding peace, and Buddhism spread far from where it began in India. So we're going to begin with this boy that is named Siddhartha Gautama. He was born a prince, and he lived inside the palace all his life. As he grew older, he began to question the meaning of life after he snuck out and he saw, for example, a sick man and a dead man. And these are things that he had never seen before. So he was on this quest for knowledge, quest for answers. And finally, he determined to find answers. There were three things that you could do. You could meditate, which is like praying. You could fast, that means you don't eat. You could learn from different teachers. Well, this is exactly what he did. And according to him, he finally found enlightenment under the tree of wisdom while he was meditating. Once he found enlightenment, he became the enlightened one. That's what Buddha means, is enlightened one. So now he's no longer called Siddhartha, he's called the Buddha. And then he spent the rest of his life traveling and teaching his ideas. You're going to come back and watch the next video on Buddha's life that'll help you understand my little bitty story in a lot more detail. And then this is a depiction of when Siddhartha left the palace walls. They call it the Great Departure. This is when he left to search for enlightenment, quote unquote, the true meaning of life. And you can tell there's some mythological things going on here as well. So what is Buddhism? Well, the Buddha came up with four noble truths. So this is what he found on his search for answers. One, he found that suffering and unhappiness are a part of human life. And no matter what you do, you cannot escape sorrow. So everyone is going to experience this. Secondly, suffering comes from our desires for pleasure and material goods. So we end up suffering when we can't get what we want or what makes us happy. So thirdly, he believed that people can overcome desire and ignorance and reach a state of perfect peace, which is called nirvana. And finally, step 4, people can overcome ignorance and desire by following what he calls the Eightfold Path. And that will lead you to wisdom, enlightenment, and salvation. So, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths. Everything comes from suffering. So if we can get rid of that suffering, we can get to a perfect state of peace. And he felt that you could do this following this Eightfold Path. There's another video on the life of Buddha. that you'll come back and watch. By the way, this is the supposed tree of wisdom when he became enlightened, or the enlightened one, and is now called the Buddha. And here's the Eightfold Path. You must have the right thought, in other words, believe in the nature of existence as suffering and in the Four Noble Truths. 2, the right intent, so you should be inclined toward goodness and kindness. 3, you should have the right speech, meaning don't lie, don't gossip. 4, the right action, don't steal from or harm others. And some of these kind of sound like the Ten Commandments. So, 5, the right livelihood, reject work that hurts others. You don't want to do that. 6, right effort, prevent evil and do good. 7, right mindfulness, control your feelings and thoughts. That's hard to do. And 8, the right concentration. That's how you get to this. And that means you practice proper meditation. So if you'll remember, back to our lesson on Hinduism, Hinduism is a very ritualistic way of living life. So the Buddha, when he was Siddhartha, before he became the Buddha, he practiced Hinduism because that was the main religion. However, now knowing what you know about the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path that he came up with to become the enlightened one, the Buddha, it went totally against Hinduism. So he began to teach that the Vedic text, remember those that the Aryans brought over and established Hinduism, the Buddha is now saying that's unnecessary. So he challenged the authority of the Hindu priest. Now, I promise you they weren't happy. So this is going to bring about a change in society. With Buddhism, there's a more individualistic approach to enlightenment rather than just the whole caste system. And rebirth means to simply evolve, to change. But not like the whole karma, dharma, the way you live your life, you're reincarnated, whether that be good or bad, like in Hinduism. Because remember, the ultimate thing in Buddhism is to become enlightened, just like the Buddha. So, of course, he's going to oppose the caste system. I mean, think about the movie, the video that you watched yesterday on the Untouchables. Remember, pretty much if you're born in a caste, you stay in that caste. So if you're one of those untouchables, how in the world would you ever reach nirvana? Or how would you ever get over suffering? So Buddha thought that the Eightfold Path could lead any individual to nirvana. And this is why it began to catch on and take believers from Hinduism, and they were converted over to Buddhism. Now, he had help. There was one of the most powerful kings in India that converted to Buddhism. His name, and you'll hear it and see it pronounced and spelled two different ways, Soka and Ashoka. I'm going to call him Ashoka. They're the same person, but with all the research I've done, I've yet to figure out which one is correct. So we'll just say Ashoka, because that's how he's referred to in most of the videos that I show. When he converted from Hinduism to Buddhism, he, of course, began to spread Buddhism in India and into foreign lands, like over into China. And actually, there were Buddhist missionaries that traveled the world to teach Buddha's Four Noble Truths and Eightfold Path, so that they could reach it. Everyone could reach enlightenment. according to the belief. Well, eventually you're going to have people within Buddhism that are going to have different thoughts. So they're going to divide up Buddhism. It's going to split into two main sects or two main groups, Theravada and Mahayana. The members of the Theravada, they were very strict in their followings of Buddha. So in other words, whatever he said, they followed it exactly. However, the members of the Mahayana believed that individual interpretation was important. So you didn't have to follow Buddha's teachings exactly. You could just kind of do what you felt like it was telling you to do. All right, so there are two other videos you're going to come back and watch, Buddha and Ashoka, and then finally, what is Buddhism? Buddhism, to kind of put a big bow on it and tie it all together. Those two videos are after the following slide, which is the map. And then once you finish watching those two videos, you'll be at the end of lesson 5.3. So here is the map. You can see in this red area is where early Buddhism began. And then these red arrows would be where those missionaries under Ashoka led others to believing in Buddhism, which has caused it to be a major world religion. So again, you're going to come back and watch this video and the other two that were earlier in the lesson, and you will be able to understand Buddhism a whole lot better. And the next time, we will do lesson 4, which is Indian empires.